Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 6, Episode 5, The Coming Storm. As always, before we begin, please support the show and avoid spoilers by watching the episode first for the official sources before watching this review. Also, I'm sorry that this episode review was a day late. It's been non-stop busy for me over in England this week, and I needed more time to get it out to you. And I'm also sorry for the reaction to last week's episode coming out so late, but it got hit by a block and I wasn't able to do anything until the end of the weekend. But it is block free now, and if you haven't seen it, link in the card above. So that's all the news details done. Let's move on now to the viewer comment section. And thanks a ton, by the way, for all of you who voted on which Volume 6 face was the freakiest so far between Tyrion and Nora. I counted up all the hashtag replies, and it turns out folks found Nora's face to be the freakiest in the show so far by 10 votes. I wonder if that will be topped. Anyway, a lot of you guys were also talking about the backlash that Ozpin faced, including the likes of Belrevan, who gave some fair reasoning for why many of us were able to justify Ozpin's actions better than the heroes did, while Donovan Walker highlighted not just the fair reactions of Team RWBY and Crow, but also why those same very actions were justifying Ozpin's actions too. And finally, Fullmetal Ninja 25 touched on Yang likely being the last one of the group to trust Ozpin again in the future, and how Raven could be brought into that very discussion between the two as well. As always, be sure to leave your thoughts for this latest episode in the comments down below, and be sure to tune in next week to see if your comment gets featured. So, last week was a short episode, but one that I feel left quite a few punches, including quite a literal one as well, as we witnessed both sides of the conflict facing some harsh truths. While a lot of fans weren't all that hot to the episode, I quite enjoyed it, and I saw it as the calm before the storm. But did this fittingly named chapter prove my point, or was this the beginning of a decline for the volume? Let's find out. We open with Cinder back at Little Miss Malachite's bar, ready to hear if she has the info on where Team RWBY and co are heading to which the info broker does disclose that the group took the train to Argus, a place that she says isn't really much of a destination. Given that we know this city is home to the largest Atlas military base outside of the kingdom, this makes sense, as I imagine most folks there, and anything going on, is strictly military related, so it's not exactly like your regular coastline location or your typical Mistral city. Cinder clues in that this means the group is heading to Atlas and quickly sets off, but not before Little Miss reveals that she knows who she is, thanks to the Vixen being the target of another client. A very familiar client to both Cinder and us watching. That's right, at long last, after all the requests and all the panel discussions and questions, RWBY's resident ice cream killer, Neo, is back. And she looks really damn good in the Maya engine. She's also not messing around, as she quickly launches at Cinder while a brand new track revealed by Jeff and Flint of RWBY to be called One Thing, which is clearly about Neo's hurt over losing Torchwick and her aims to gain revenge on those she feels is responsible. Though I doubt Cinder is the only one that Neo blames, as of course it was Little Red Ruby that the criminal duo took on back in the Sky and Vale. It's the perfect aggressive tune to accompany what ends up being a very fast-paced fight between two super skilled women. And I'm so happy to see Neo's trademark close quarters combat return in such style. No one else fights the same way she does, and this tussle reintroduces her quality fighting skills wonderfully, with deft dodges, slick movements, and nimble kicks. Even with Cinder's own quick and vicious attacks, Neo makes it difficult for her, though it is notable that Cinder lands the first clean hit on Neo in the show so far, a feat that neither Yang nor RWBY were able to pull off in their bouts with the pint-sized girl, and Cinder is able to hold her own much better than those two did. This shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, as we've seen in the past with her fights with Ozpin and Amber that Cinder is also a pro at striking and moving fast and hard. And it makes for quite the even affair as the two trade blows all over the bar, making good use as well of the surroundings for some added flair, which I highly welcome. It makes the fight feel anchored to the setting. And props as well for this super cool flaming fish shot, especially with the fire reflecting in Neo's eyes. Nice touch. I will say though that if I had to give a negative here, I wasn't fond of Little Miss cutting in to tell the girls to continue the fight outside, as while it did show her control over such a hostile situation, it did mean that the fight lost some of its intensity and flow, and I feel the girls could have easily just jumped out the bar themselves without missing a beat. A little nitpicky I know, but it was a pause in the action that I felt could have been better off being cut. Regardless, the fight does carry on outside, where we see Cinder is actually fighting another one of Neo's illusion clones. So Neo's gotten even stronger than before if she was able to create a copy that could take on Cinder that well for a good amount of time. As for the Rio Neo, she pops out from the mist, and we see her new headwear. Roman's trademark hat. I know, Neo, I miss him too. But boy does she not look all that good. Her clothes are dirty and torn, and her mood in general is a mixture of sad and angry. Obviously she's been struggling a lot by herself since we last saw her flying away during the Battle of Beacon, and her mood doesn't improve when Cinder brushes off her involvement in Roman's demise so candidly, telling her to focus her anger instead towards little Red Ruby. True, she wasn't exactly involved in the fight that led to Roman's death, but I guess that Neo is blaming Cinder for Roman being involved in general with the events at Beacon, as she brought him into her schemes. And the dismissal leads to another well-animated and hotly contested brawl, this time with the pair's weapons, before Cinder has had enough after a strong hit to the face, and she snaps into her maiden powers, including her first use of wind magic. This calms things down, and Cinder proposes that the two of them discuss working together to get their payback on RWBY instead of needlessly fighting each other, an idea that Neo does look to agree with. I am so happy to see these two are teaming up with each other, as it makes a lot of sense, and it gives each of them something new and exciting for their personal stories. With Cinder, I can see that she's taken Little Miss's words about using what could harm you as an advantage to heart, by using Neo's own hatred for her benefit. I reckon that Cinder knows she won't have Salem's aid or the aid of her allies to help her after failing at Haven, and if she's looking to take down RWBY, she'll need extra help to handle her friends. So if she can use Neo to better her chances, so be it. As for Neo, the look on her face makes it clear that she knows Cinder is strong with her maiden powers, maybe even too strong for her to try killing right now. But if Cinder is offering her a chance to get at RWBY by working together, why not accept the offer and then maybe think about trying to backstab her during their team up to kill two birds with one stone. Overall though, this opening scene was quite thrilling, despite it being more of a fan service fight than anything else. It was an explosion of energy that hooked me in right from the start, and it made for a fun reintroduction for a much loved and highly demanded character. I know not everyone is hot on Neo, a lot of folks seeing her as a nothing character with very little worth to add to the story, but I at least have found her quite enjoyable, and I appreciate that her inclusion has more meaning to it than just pleasing the fan demands. Neo actually has a stake now in the narrative as part of this partnership with a fellow RWBY despising villain. It's not just adding her back in for the sake of it, there's an actual impact that she can make, and it's got solid motivation behind it with wanting revenge. And while I welcome the return of Neo's flawless and stylish fighting, it's great to see that Cinder wasn't being totally dominated by her like Yang and RWBY were. Cinder is a key villain whose role in the story is much bigger than Neo's, and after the heavy loss she had against Raven, I don't think Cinder could handle her threat level taking another big defeat so soon after her return. so it's a good sight to see her being able to hold her own with the seemingly invincible Neo, and even nearly squeezing out a victory too. Though now that we see that the Neo that she was fighting was actually a copy, it does mean that we are still yet to see a direct hit on the Rio Neo. Now we got two deadly women wanting to harm our lead character, and there's potential to be found here if the chemistry as partners works just as well as it did as opponents. I can't be the only one, surely, who thinks that the pair interacting with each other could be a solid setup for finally exploring each woman's barely detailed backstories and origins, right? But yes, a thoroughly amazing opening contest, a satisfying return, and the exciting prospects that this pairing can provide added up to a resoundingly positive kickoff to the episode. Switching gears now back to Brunswick Farms, the suspicious nature of the place being abandoned for seemingly no reason despite being in good condition has RWBY confused, but the pressing matter is getting inside away from the freezing storm, and once they're in, the group splits off, though RWBY spots an interesting photo on the wall for the Brunswick family, including two very notable kids that the episode is paying a lot of attention towards. Safe to say that the episode is suggesting that these two are Roman and Neo, and they grew up here as members of the Brunswick family. They do have similar hairstyles, even with the shading of the scene making it hard to pick up the finer details, and this is the same episode where we just had Neo make her grand return. So that, and the similar sounding name to Torchwick, can't be a coincidence. Given as well the similar looking older women standing behind each of them, this photo also seems to suggest that Roman and Neo are perhaps cousins, which makes me now feel real bad for any gelato shippers out there, if this is the case. Oh boy. The question now is, what led to them ending up in Vale and apparently changing their identities? We'll discuss that in a bit, but for now, a scream from Weiss sends everyone upstairs, and we see what spooked her. A pair of rotten corpses in bed. Well, that's quite the striking image. Never thought I would see something as dark as human husks in RWBY, so I can't blame Weiss for freaking out like she did and still feeling spooked when we later see the gang huddled up in the living room by the fire. What's worse is, this isn't just happening here. In fact, all of the people that once lived on the farm are also now corpses asleep in their bed. Okay, so what happened? This is not a natural death if everyone's the same way. And what's even more frightening is they all died peacefully in their sleep. So what gives? Well, jumping forward a bit, some of the group during this last half of the episode keep saying that they're feeling tired. And sure, they've all been through a lot lately that does make it understandable for them to be worn out and in need of rest. But with the Brunswicks dying in their beds in such a mysterious way, there's a possible connection to be found. What if this ends up tying into the Headless Horseman concept that was first brought up from the last episode? That beast in a city that's also named Brunswick warned hunters to not ride out the next day lest they face an accident. So what if here it's more like a Headless Horseman Grimm has the ability to emit something that makes folks sleepy, and as they try to sleep through to the next day, it leaves them vulnerable to its attack. I've also seen someone by the name of X Stonehill on Tumblr suggest that it could be a Natamaran, or just simply a mare, a Norse entity that rides on people's chest while they're asleep, resulting in bad dreams that can scare you so badly that you die. That would explain why the bodies don't look disturbed in their beds, if this was something that affected their minds which killed them. Whatever it is, the fact that some of the group is now feeling tired suddenly has a lot more reason to be concerned than before. Though I will admit, the idea of a bad dream-inducing Grimm could provide some great material if we get to see these nightmares. Imagine if we see a nightmare version of Weiss's fears regarding her father, failing her legacy, or just going back home again. Or if we see Yang's fears about Adam, Blake, or her arm. There's a lot of cool possibilities, though again, that's if this theory rings true. But man, I did not expect to be getting all these nervy feelings about this place. Suddenly it's getting all day 5 up in here. It could also tie into why Roman and Neo left this place if this was indeed their home. Somehow they survived the nightmares, and to keep safe, they left home and started all over again somewhere else. Heck, imagine if Neo's nightmares were so bad that that's why she's now a mute. Okay, I'm losing track of things here, but long story short, suddenly this entire scene has some intense horror vibes, and in any other situation, you'd be fair in wanting to leave this place as soon as possible. But with a snowstorm outside, they can't go anywhere without risking dying out in the cold. So for now, the group will have to grin and bear it until it passes. And until then, they might as well make the most of it. So they all split up for different tasks. Oscar and Maria will stay in the living room, Crow will go scout out the place some more, Blake and Yang will look for any vehicles that will allow them for easier transport to Argus, and Ruby suggests looking for some food to help raise Weiss's spirits. We first, however, follow up with the Bumblebee pair and their hunt for some transport, and the girls get to talking about the cause for the bodies, though it's clear that Yang isn't really in the best mental space right now. Understandably so, given what's transpired today, and with everything else that's weighing on her mind. The good news is that Yang does find a flatbed which can be connected to her bike and provide the team a good method to get to Argus much faster. But she also spots Adam outside about to strike, though this is just another one of her PTSD flashes, something that I'm glad to see is still an issue she's having troubles with dealing, as I think many of us do agree that it was a tidbit that was skimmed over back in Volume 4. That night in Beacon still causes her pain and suffering, even after finding her feet again. But this time, Blake is here to see these struggles, and she offers some words of comfort. She knows that Adam's biggest strength is control, and she'll do anything to stop anyone else being torn apart by the control of fear. And unlike in the past, when Yang had to deal with these haunting images alone, Blake promises to be there for her, even holding her new arm to cement her dedication to Yang, which does reassure her for a few seconds, as Blake then says that she'll protect Yang, which actually sours her mood. Surprisingly, she almost looks insulted by Blake's comments, and any good vibes that was being shared just got shot down hard. And yet, I love how this touching moment ended. We're slowly moving our way into the talk that these two need to have. And while she was able to show her drive to make up for her faults, I appreciate how Blake's first efforts at trying to be there for her teammates didn't end with the best overall outcome. She did well earlier with comforting Weiss and addressing the situation with Ruby, but her biggest hurdle is Yang, and such a strained relationship with a lot of conflicting emotions getting in the way is more engrossing when we see those involved stumble along the way to a rekindled connection. Mind you, Yang does admit to Blake that she's still traumatized by what happened with Adam at Beacon, something that she hasn't even brought up with anyone else, so there is still a level of trust to be found in her partner. And yet there's this vibe in the scene where both girls can tell they need to talk this out, but something is holding them back, and were it not for Yang misunderstanding Blake's intentions, they probably would have made a breakthrough. She thinks Blake's comments are influenced by pity instead of genuine support, because she fears being seen as weak, too weak to protect herself or those she cared about, just like she feels she was too weak to stop Adam from hurting them both. Obviously that's not what Blake meant by what she said. She wasn't able to stop her world from harming Yang before, and after running away and seeing the harm done in that, she is here now trying to rectify for her faults. But the damage can't be healed so quickly, and hopefully we'll see more strong moments like this if they continue to be this entertaining. But the sorrowful moments don't stop here, as after Weiss shows off her best Lumos spell, the discovery of tons of alcohol has Ruby concerned. With how broken Crow has been since the stuff with Ozpin earlier, Ruby is worried about her uncle's condition if his sadness causes him to drink himself into an even worse state. Wow, Crow's drinking habits are actually being given a dramatic touch. I like it. Oh, okay, sure. Most of us assume that Crow started drinking in the first place because of something traumatic in his past, so this concept isn't all that shocking, but this is the first time that his penchant for being drunk isn't played for laughs. It's a genuine concern that Ruby has for her troubled uncle. I didn't expect that either in this episode, but heck yeah, let's explore this little chestnut. The more that we can flesh out his character, the better. And I dug as well that Weiss didn't need Ruby to spell out her fears, as it makes sense that she would understand what's on her mind, since she no doubt has had the same worries about her mother and her drinking problems as well. Nice bit of show don't tell there. This then leads to Weiss asking Ruby if they really do need to go to Atlas. No doubt this is a worry partly because of the stuff with Salem being immortal, but more so because of the Ice Queen's nerves with the idea of returning home so soon after breaking free from it. With everything that she's been going through right now, the last thing she needs is getting closer to her father's iron grip once again. But Ruby, even after taking some heavy knocks to her faith, sounds like she's still on board with the mission at Atlas and everything else regardless of the recent revelations, and her confusion over Weiss's comments seems to convince Weiss to, at least for now, pass off talking about her issues too. There's a lot of this not opening up hindrance to conversations, as well as the previously discussed trend of the group getting sleepy, and like I said before, this can't be a coincidence with everything happening alongside what happened to the Brunswicks. But alas, the two press on, and find not only more alcohol, but a locked cellar door. Well, isn't that foreboding? At least they found some food. This is actually a nice little bit of humor in this otherwise tense scene. In fact, there's a decent amount of solid jokes to be found throughout the episode, though it's not to the point where it detracts from the tone that's present, even with Ruby's lively expressions. It's just a nice bit of warm levity amongst the bleakness, which makes for the final shot of the girls leaving just as the cellar door opens briefly, all the more unsettling. Is it the Grim that's responsible for the Brunswick's deaths and the possibly deadly tiredness that's affecting the group? Could it actually be a survivor and the real danger is actually hiding out somewhere else? Who can say for sure right now, but I can say this. My god, can the crewbie create an effectively nail-biting atmosphere? This was an incredibly uncomfortable episode, but in a good way though. I'll admit that I'm not usually one for horror, but time and time again, the crewbie has done a remarkable job at making an anguish-filled episode hook me all the way through. The stuff with the Brunswicks was freaky beyond measure, and I'm more than excited to see where this goes. This rapidly gripping mystery, along with the excellent uses of the limited lighting, the shadows, and especially the lack of music, truly makes for a lot of these already scary scenes feeling practically claustrophobic. Despite this tension, the comedy again was still effective, as it was not only charming, but it also smartly lowered our defenses to best let the suspense make us feel concerned and on edge. It never felt distracting, but instead were little comforts that added to the atmosphere in the best way possible. The chat with Blake and Yang, while brief, was a very nicely delivered piece that set into the stage for how vital their true venting will be, and seeing them go through the highs and lows of discussing what's on their mind and dealing with the emotions blocking the way to true progress was top quality. It also showed just how big the past left an impact on them, and how much more they still need to grow until they can best approach their efforts to recapture their once tight-knit connection, and come to terms with some of their concerns. And Ruby is portrayed once again as a terrifically forward-thinking, level-headed leader, perhaps more so than any episode previously this volume. She took charge, showed compassion, and bared even more emotional baggage on her shoulders, which I feel is done to make her eventual breaking point hit even harder, after we see just how determined she is in trying to keep the ship steady. And Neo. Boy is it good to see you back, and in top form too, with the episode's energetic and wicked cool fight to kick off the episode. I do wish her return wasn't as teased as it was with the opening clues to truly make her return a big surprise, but her inclusion is still awesome. A buttery smooth, sharp-paced, and massively animated contest that had the right result to benefit both women involved, and it establishes a new dynamic that should prove to be rewarding in the long run. And while the voice performances from the cast as a whole continue their fine form, I want to give a shout out to Lindsay Jones, who gets my voice acting gold star of the episode, as she did an amazing job portraying Ruby's colourful and warm quirks, but also nailing the seriousness of the scenes that's asked of her at the same time. So in the end, this proved to be a fantastic episode that had me glued to the screen all the way to the end. A super hot fight welcoming back a fan fave in an effective manner, a double dose of brilliant character bonding, and a tone that proves that the crewbie knows how to set the scene and make it grasp your fullest attention. There's plenty to come from all sorts of angles in this volume, and I'm committed to every single one of them, and as we reach the halfway point of the volume, I'm eagerly awaiting another impressive entry, and whatever new developments come our way with the next bump in this edge of the seat for a ride of the volume. But those are just my thoughts, time to make sure you leave yours. Are you happy to see Neo back? How do you feel about the Bumblebee scene? And what do you think happened on the farm? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop, and follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on all things RWBY, updates on future content, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.